My daughter-in-law never liked me.
I can see that now, looking back. At the time, I did what mothers do best. I made excuses for her. She's shy, I told myself. She's stressed. She didn't mean it like that. I held on to that belief for years, until the day she made it perfectly clear that she didn't want me around. And that was the day I finally decided to stop saving her from herself. My name is Margaret. I'm 68. I raised one son, Daniel, mostly on my own. His father left when he was 12 and never really looked back. So it was always just us. We had our own little world, cheap takeout on Fridays, old movies on an ancient television, murky fish tanks he swore he was going to clean. I worked overtime, double shifts, whatever was needed. I missed things, school plays, a game or two. But I did the best I could with what I had. He used to say, "Don't worry, Mum. When I grow up, I'll take care of you." I believed him. Then he met her. Her name was Emily. Pretty, polished, always perfectly manicured nails. The kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. The first time I met her, she gave me a hug that felt more like a pose. Her perfume was strong, too sweet, overpowering. "So nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Clark," she said. "Oh, Margaret is fine," I told her. I remember thinking, well, she's a little stiff, but she'll loosen up. She didn't. From the beginning, I was tolerated, not welcomed. If I laughed too loud, she flinched. If I tried to help clear the table, she insisted she had it. If I told a story, she glanced at Daniel like she was checking how long she had to endure it. Maybe another woman would have pulled back then. Maybe a wiser woman would have kept her distance. But I was just a mother who didn't want to lose her son. So when they needed help, I was there. When they moved into their first apartment, I was the one hauling boxes, bringing over pots and pans, folding linens, setting up the cheap little table I found at a thrift store. When Daniel's car broke down, I was the one who paid for half the repair, even though he said he'd handle it. I knew he couldn't. When Emily lost her job, I just happened to send some extra money that month, pretending it was from an old savings bond I'd forgotten about. I took the bus and walked in the rain to save gas so they could keep theirs. That's what mothers do. We go without quietly. We give loudly and call it nothing. Years went by. Their life flourished. Mine settled into a small, quiet routine. I still worked part-time at the library. I liked the quiet, the smell of old books, the steady rhythm of stamping return dates. And every month, like clockwork, rent money for them, groceries delivered by mistake to their address, a transfer when they were a little short this month. They never asked directly, not usually. It was always, "We're trying to figure it out," or "We might need to push a bill or two." And I would say, "Well, if this helps," and it always did. When they had their first child, Lily, I cried more than I'd like to admit. She had Daniel's eyes, my mother's nose, Emily's lips. I held that baby and thought, this is why everything was hard. This is why I kept going. This is what it was all for. I offered to watch her. Of course I did. "You don't have to, we'll manage," Emily said. But the next week she called and asked if I could come by, just for a few hours, so she could shower and catch up on sleep. I went. I stayed. I folded laundry that wasn't mine. I washed dishes I didn't dirty. I held the baby while she napped in the other room. Sometimes Daniel came home and smiled at me the way he used to, and for a moment I could pretend nothing had changed. But Emily's eyes always followed me, measuring, weighing, judging. One evening, after I spent 8 straight hours with Lily so they could go to a much-needed date, Emily came back in with a small paper bag. "Here," she said, handing it to me. Inside was a candle, one of those store-bought ones with generic-smelling flowers. "Just to say thank you," she said. It was polite, superficially kind, but I remember thinking, that's the value of my time? My entire day? A $15 candle? I lit it once. The scent gave me a headache. I put it in a cupboard and forgot about it. The thing about resentment is that it doesn't arrive all at once. It builds, slowly, quietly, like a slow drip in a ceiling you don't notice until the paint bubbles and breaks. The bubble burst for me on a Wednesday evening in late autumn, the kind of evening where the sky turns bruised purple early and the chill sneaks into your bones before you realize it. I had gone over unannounced, which I rarely did. Daniel had mentioned they'd been overwhelmed, and I'd made a large pot of stew, enough for a couple of days. I knocked. No answer. Their car was in the driveway. Lights were on. I hesitated, but I had a key. They'd given it to me. I told myself that meant something. I let myself in. The house smelled faintly of baby powder and something burnt. I heard voices from the kitchen. I followed the sound. Emily's voice was low, sharp, frayed with irritation. "I can't take it anymore," she was saying. "She's always here, always inserting herself. It feels like we can't breathe without her hovering." Daniel murmured something I couldn't make out. I froze at the edge of the hallway, invisible. "You need to talk to her," Emily snapped. "Tell her to back off. I married you, not the whole package. I didn't sign up for your mother being involved in every little thing." My chest went tight. I clutched the warm pot to my chest like a shield. "I'm just saying," she continued. "Either she learns her place, or I'm done with this constant interference. I don't want her over here all the time. It's exhausting." Daniel's response was soft, too soft. "I'll talk to her," he said. I didn't stay to hear anything else. My hands were sweating. The pot slipped slightly and I almost dropped it. I stepped back quietly, turned, and left. No slamming doors, no dramatic confrontations, just the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears as I walked back to my car in the dark. I drove home with the stew still sitting in the passenger seat, untouched. When I got home, I set it on my own stove. I put the lid on, and I cried. Not loud, not heaving sobs, just quiet, leaking tears that slid down into the wrinkles at the sides of my mouth and chin. The kind of tears that say, "Of course, of course. How did you not see this coming?" I could have confronted him then, called him, told him I heard everything. Instead, I decided to wait, to see if he would say anything on his own. He didn't. Days went by, then weeks. He called. We talked about Lily, about work, about the weather. He didn't mention my place. He didn't bring up my interference. Apparently, what he heard that night was easier to fold up and tuck away than what I heard. So I started folding myself away instead. At first, I simply visited less. I waited for invitations instead of dropping hints about stopping by. I stopped sending groceries without being asked. I stopped paying for things automatically. Not a full stop, not yet, just easing off the gas. They didn't seem to notice. If they did, they didn't say anything. Then came the message. It was almost a year after that night. In that year, I had watched Lily so often I knew her nap schedule better than her parents did, covered the gap when their landlord raised the rent, paid part of the down payment on a larger house they needed for the future, and loaned Daniel money for a new car when his old one finally surrendered. He called it a loan. I never expected to see it again. I overheard him once telling a friend, "Yeah, we've got help. My mum's always been there. We're lucky." Lucky. I held on to that word like a small pebble in my pocket, turning it over and over when the other things he said hurt too much. The new house was nice, bigger, whiter, colder somehow. They hosted a housewarming party. I helped pay for the catering. I stood in the kitchen refilling trays and pretending to eat. At one point, one of Emily's friends said, "You're so lucky to have a mother-in-law who helps so much. Mine is useless." Emily laughed. "Well, it's nice, most of the time, but boundaries are still a work in progress." I caught her eye. There was something defiant there. That night, I went home feeling like I had been a hired extra at an event I funded. Then, the invitation came. Not to another party, to dinner, a family dinner, just the three of us and Lily. "Sunday 6 p.m?" Daniel had texted. "We'd love to have you over." I was surprised, pleasantly so. I baked a pie. I ironed my nicest blouse. I even put on a touch of lipstick, which I almost never do these days. At 5 o'clock, I was just about to leave when my phone chimed. A message. Not from Daniel, from her. It was longer than her usual ones. Usually, her texts were short, stiff, efficient. This one was not. Hi, Margaret. I think it's better if you don't come tonight. We've been talking, and we really need some time just as a nuclear family without outside influence. You've been over a lot, and it's starting to feel like you're crossing boundaries. Please understand we don't want you here this evening. I read it once, then again. My vision blurred halfway through the third read. Outside influence, crossing boundaries. We don't want you here. She always managed to make cruelty sound like a therapy session. My hands went cold. The room felt smaller. I sat down at the kitchen table, phone in hand. For a long time, I didn't move. There's a moment, just after someone hurts you, where you decide who you are going to be in the next 10 seconds. The version of me that raised my son wanted to reply, "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to overstep." The version of me that heard her whisper to Daniel wanted to type, "You ungrateful, manipulative little girl." But a third version, the one that had watched them take and take and take, she just typed, "Okay, thank you for telling me," and hit send. Then I stood up, walked to the counter, and turned off the oven. The pie sagged slightly as it cooled, unwanted. I looked around my small kitchen, the peeling wallpaper, the old clock that ticked a little too loudly, the worn-out rug by the sink. For the first time, it felt less like a prison, and more like something else, a refuge. They didn't want me there? Fine. Let them see what it really meant for me to be gone. The next morning, I sat down at my little desk in the corner of the living room. I opened the old notebook where I kept track of every major expense I'd covered for them. I wasn't obsessive about it, but I'd learned from experience that family money is the quickest way to misunderstandings, so I wrote things down. First month's rent, $1,200. Emergency dental bill, $600. Hospital bills when Lily was born, $4,800. Car repairs, $900. New car loan, $7,000. Down payment help, $15,000. Groceries, utilities, random little things that added up to big things. I went through my banking app and double-checked figures. I wasn't angry as I did it. I was clear. Then I did something I never thought I would do. I went into my online banking settings and cancelled every recurring transfer to Daniel's account. Automatic rent support, gone. Monthly grocery card refill, gone. Streaming services I paid for that they used more than I did, cancelled. It took 12 minutes. 12 minutes to undo years of reflexive generosity. When I was finished, my heart was pounding. I half expected my phone to ring instantly. It didn't. Of course not. They didn't know yet. I had always been quiet, soft-spoken, easy to overlook. They were about to learn the cost of that. For a week, nothing happened. Maybe they didn't notice. Maybe they thought it was a glitch. Maybe they assumed it would sort itself out, like everything always had, mysteriously. On day 8, my phone buzzed. Daniel. "Hey, Mom, weird question. Did something go wrong with the rent transfer? It didn't arrive." I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the letters. I could have lied, said there was a bank error, promised to fix it. Instead, I replied, "I've decided to stop sending money. I trust you and Emily will handle things as a family." There was a pause. Then he called. I let it ring out. He texted again. "Is everything okay? This is really sudden." Sudden. I looked at the word for a moment, then wrote back, "It's been coming for a long time." He didn't respond to that right away. I imagined the conversation in their house. I could almost hear Emily's tone. "She's being dramatic. She's manipulating us. This is exactly what I mean." What she meant, I realized, was, "How dare you stop letting me use you?" 3 days later, I was at home, reading in my favorite chair, when there was a sharp knock at my door. It was Emily, not Daniel. That alone told me this was going to be interesting. She stood on my porch, arms crossed, brows pinched. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stepped aside. She swept in like a cold gust of wind. No Lily, no diaper bag, just her. I gestured for her to sit at the table. She stayed standing. "Did you cancel the rent?" she demanded, straight to it. "Yes," I said. "Why?" she snapped. I folded my hands in my lap to keep them from shaking. "Because," I said quietly, "you told me you didn't want me around. I'm respecting that." Her mouth twisted. "I said we needed space from your interference," she retorted. "That doesn't mean you get to just cut us off financially without warning. We have responsibilities, Margaret. A child, bills, a mortgage. This is not the time to suddenly get petty." Petty. The word hit me like a slap. I swallowed it. "For years," I said slowly, "I have helped, voluntarily, quietly. You never complained when the money arrived, when the groceries showed up, when I stayed up with Lily so you could sleep." "That's not the point," she snapped. "The point is you can't just—" "I can," I said. The firmness in my voice surprised even me. She blinked. I continued. "You don't want me in your lives. You've made that clear. You think I'm crossing boundaries by being present. So I'm stepping back. Completely. That includes my money. I'm not an institution, Emily. I'm a person. If I'm not welcome, then neither is my support." Her eyes flashed. "So what? This is revenge? You think you're teaching us some kind of lesson?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Yes," I said. "I suppose I am." She stared at me, clearly expecting me to back down, to soften, to apologize. I didn't. She huffed, grabbed her bag, and stalked toward the door. "This is going to hurt Daniel too," she threw over her shoulder. "I know," I said quietly. "It already has." She paused, but she didn't turn around. She left. The door shut with a dull, decisive thud. I sat back down. My heart raced, but there was a strange calm beneath it. For the first time, I had chosen myself. 2 weeks later, the real cracks began to show. Daniel stopped being as responsive. His messages, when they came, were strained. He never asked directly for money, but his words circled around the subject. "Work's been rough. Emily's stressed about the bills. We're trying to figure things out." I replied with simple encouragement. "I know you can handle it. I believe in you. I'm here if you want to talk." But I didn't offer what I had always offered before. Solutions, rescues, quiet checks with blank memo lines. One evening, my phone rang at nearly midnight. It was Daniel. I hesitated, then picked up. "Mom?" His voice was tight, frayed at the edges. "Yes, sweetheart." He hadn't called me that in years, not since he moved out. "Are you mad at me?" he asked. It was such a small question, such a childish one. It broke something soft in me. My first instinct was to rush in with comfort, tell him, no, of course not, never. But I forced myself to be honest. "I'm hurt," I said. "Not angry, hurt. Because we asked for space. Because you let her feed you a story about who I am and didn't fight for the version you know," I wanted to say. "Because you let her words land where my presence once did. Because you heard her say I was too much and said nothing. All I said was, because of how it was done." He was quiet for a moment. "She didn't mean it like that," he said weakly. "She wrote, 'We don't want you here,'" I reminded him softly. He sighed. "She's been overwhelmed," he said. "She doesn't express herself well sometimes." "She expresses herself very clearly," I said. There was another pause. "Mom, can you at least reinstate the rent while we get back on our feet?" he finally asked. There it was, the real question. Not, "Can we talk about what happened?" Not, "How do you feel?" Not, "I'm sorry." Just, "Can you fix it for us?" I closed my eyes. "No," I said. He inhaled sharply. "No?" he echoed. "No," I repeated. "I love you. I will always love you. But I can't keep holding your life together while your wife resents me for being part of it. It's tearing me apart, and it's not helping you grow. I should have stopped a long time ago." "So this is punishment," he said, the anger creeping in now. "It's a boundary," I said. "Something your wife seems very fond of mentioning." He exhaled hard. "Fine," he muttered. "We'll figure it out without you." And he hung up. The silence afterward was deafening. For days, I moved through my routines like a ghost. Work, home, tea, sleep, repeat. My friends noticed I was quieter at our weekly coffee meetup. "Everything all right, Maggie?" one of them asked. "My family's learning who I am," I said with a small smile. It was the closest thing to the truth I could manage without crying in public. Word travels in small social circles faster than a paid courier. I started hearing little things. They'd missed a payment. They were arguing more. Emily had taken on extra shifts somewhere. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. This wasn't about them suffering. This was about me no longer volunteering to suffer alone. The lesson wasn't for them, not really. It was for me. That I could say no and still exist. That I could stop giving and still be good. Months passed. Then, one Saturday morning, there was another knock at my door. It was Daniel this time, alone. He looked older, heavier in the eyes, his shoulders sagging under invisible weight. "Hi, Mum," he said. "Hi," I replied. We stood there for an awkward second before I moved aside. He came in, sat at my table, looked around like he hadn't really seen the place before. I suppose he hadn't. As children, they think of home as a given. As adults, they rarely ask who else still lives there after they leave. "How are you?" I asked. He laughed hollowly. "Not great," he admitted. I waited. He rubbed his face. "She's talking about separation," he said quietly. "Says I'm not stepping up enough, that I'm not doing my part, that I let you run the show for too long, and now I don't know how to be independent." I watched him as he spoke. The irony was so thick it almost choked me. "How do you feel about that?" I asked. He shrugged helplessly. "Lost," he said. "Angry. At her. At myself. At you sometimes, if I'm honest. And then I feel guilty about that." "I can take it," I said gently. He looked at me, eyes red-rimmed. "I let you become our safety net," he said. "I didn't push back when she called you names behind your back. I didn't defend you. I didn't want conflict. And now everything's falling apart anyway. And I'm realizing I never really learned how to stand on my own." My throat tightened. I reached for his hand. "I didn't know how to stop helping," I said. "I thought that's what love was, doing everything you can, all the time. I didn't realize I was making it easier for you to stay small." He chuckled humorlessly. "Congratulations," he said. "You cut us off. Now I feel very large in my problems." We both laughed then. A sad, tired little sound, but it was something. He stayed for hours that day. We talked about things we'd never said out loud before. His fear of failing, my fear of being forgotten. How Emily had slowly convinced him that my presence was suffocating. "She made it sound like you were trying to control us," he said. "But now I see she just wanted me separate, easier to manage." He hesitated. "She told me once," he admitted, "that once the house was fully paid off and things were stable, we wouldn't need you hanging around anymore, that it would be time to cut the cord." Something in my chest went cold. "I see," I said softly. He looked ashamed. "I should have told you," he said. "Yes," I replied. "You should have." We let that hang between us. Uncomfortable, necessary. "Is there any chance," he began, then trailed off. "Of what?" I prompted. "Of you helping again?" he asked, though he couldn't quite meet my eyes. There it was again, the old pattern, reaching for us with long, familiar fingers. I took a deep breath. "I will never abandon you," I said. "If you are on the street, starving, I will feed you. If Lily needs somewhere safe, she will always have my home. But I won't go back to funding a life where I'm resented in the background. My support is no longer silent or invisible. If I'm not allowed in the room, neither is my money." He nodded slowly. "I understand," he said, and I think for the first time he did. A few months later, the separation papers were filed. Emily moved in with a friend. Then, from what little I heard, with another man. She sent one message directly to me during all of that. It read, "I hope you're happy. You ruined everything." I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, I didn't ruin anything. I simply stepped out of the way. Everything else destroyed itself. She didn't respond. Some people never learn their lesson. Not really. Not the way you hope. But that's the thing about revenge, if you can call it that. It isn't always explosive. It isn't always dramatic. Mine was simple. I stopped giving. I stopped rescuing. I stopped offering hands to people who only used them to climb on my back. And from where I sat, sipping my tea in my quiet little kitchen, I watched as the life they'd built on my unpaid labor and unthanked generosity began to creak and shake, and then crumble under its own weight. Do I feel sorry for Emily? Not particularly. The world is full of women who marry men and resent the mothers who raised them, who accept help and call it meddling, who gladly take the benefits of sacrifice and sneer at the person who made them possible. But I do feel something for her, pity, because in pushing me out, she didn't just lose a free babysitter, a bill payer, a cook, a cleaner. She lost the one person who genuinely wanted her to be happy with my son, the one person who would have stood in her corner when things got truly hard. She won the battle to get me out of their house. She lost the war of learning what it means to build a family on respect. As for Daniel, he learned his own lessons the hard way. He learned how to budget, how to cook simple meals, how to calm Lily when she cried in the middle of the night instead of handing her off to someone else. He learned how to show up, really show up. One evening, after I'd watched Lily so he could attend a late meeting, we sat at my table again. Do you ever regret it? He asked suddenly. Regret what? I replied. Stopping, he said, drawing that line, teaching us. This lesson, I guess. I thought about the lonely nights, the guilt, the temptation to send money anonymously, to swoop in one more time. I thought about the version of me who would have kept quietly enabling his life until my body gave out. Then I looked at the man in front of me, older, more tired, but steadier. His daughter asleep on the couch in the next room, safe. No, I said, I regret waiting so long. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm sorry it took losing so much to see you clearly, he murmured. It often does, I said with a soft smile. So yes, my daughter-in-law didn't want me around. She made sure I knew it. She framed it as boundaries and independence and healthy distance. What she didn't understand, what she still doesn't, I suspect, is that you can't spend years biting the hand that feeds you and then act surprised when it finally closes. The lesson wasn't dramatic. I didn't throw fits. I didn't name-call. I didn't turn my son against her. All I did was step back and let the gravity of their own ungratefulness pull everything where it was always heading. Some might call that revenge. Some might call it justice. I call it finally choosing myself. And that, in the quiet of my little kitchen, with my granddaughter's laughter echoing down the hallway, and my son washing dishes at my sink like he used to when he was young, that feels like the sweetest ending I could have hoped for.